In this episode, I talk about the 5 whys and how they will help you design awesome e-learning scenarios. Let's get to it.
You're here because you want more engagement, more delight, more fun, more learning. You're hungry for change and willing to take action.
If you're not prepared to be wrong, you'll never come up with anything original.
Welcome to the E-Learning Scenario Design Podcast with Anna Sabramowitz.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
Let's take learning to the next level.
And welcome to another episode. I am so glad you are joining me today because I have something awesome to talk about with you. It's called the 5 whys strategy. Okay, so, this is another piece from my up-and-coming book, which is going to be about designing e-learning scenarios, of course. No surprise for you there, right? You're ready for this. But it's something that I think is so important because designing great scenarios, the mechanical parts actually are not really that complicated. It really is, as far as I'm concerned, it really is how much analysis you do up front to figure out what the most important aspect of fixing a behavior or fixing a problem is. And when you can distill that down, wow, it's so powerful. You really do create amazing pieces that people enjoy. And I'm doing this book not because I think there needs to be more stuff on theory out there. This is actually a very practical book on outlining basically my systems, my processes. And I'm putting this out there because it is, I know it's not everybody can attend my workshops, and I know that not everybody can get their company to get me down to their department to give them a workshop, a personal workshop for $10,000. That's not scalable for everybody. So what I wanted to do is put together something that wouldn't be, a 3-month project for somebody. It could give them the nitty-gritty overview to just start applying this stuff at their work and start putting out things that make them feel like they're having impact. They're actually going through the process, not feeling overwhelmed because it's laid out in a systematic way, and also that, when you put it out there, you are proud of it because it's actually, because you've asked the right questions and you followed the process, it's going to have impact. And that's what it's all about, right? Just feeling like the stuff that you do means something, that somebody's actually getting benefit out of it. And it feels so freaking good when you do that. So that's why I want to talk to you about the 5 whys today, because we only have so much time, energy, resources, all those things. And if we can actually build something that, so many people get in touch with me and say, how can I prove to my company that activity-based e-learning, scenario-based e-learning is the way to go? How can I prove to my company that we got to let go of all this content stuff and actually just deliver great, learner-centered, action-driven pieces where people actually find them valuable and say, oh, okay, that was awesome. I realized that I didn't know everything I thought I knew, or that I actually now want to figure out how I can do that better. So, how do we do that? So let me talk to you about the 5 whys method, because I think it's really going to help you take you to the next level and also just give you a framework that you can use. And all you need to do, it's pretty self-explanatory, the 5 whys method. But one of the things that gets in our way, might be getting in your way, is that when you don't have the confidence, or when people come to you with an idea that they already think they've already figured out what needs to be done, we have to push back. And it doesn't have to be, rude or anything. You just have to be confident in your mind that you need to do this analysis regardless of what's already been decided, because you want to deliver the most valuable, awesome scenario design product out there. And regardless of what's happened in the past, regardless of any other training, things that haven't worked or whatever, you don't stop until the 5 whys have been addressed. Because one of the things that we cannot assume as the people who are the drivers behind these projects, the people who are now, adding our expertise to the teams that don't have it, because that's what you do. You add the expertise that the team does not have in the areas of learning, in the areas of scenarios, in the areas of consequences, feedback, all those things. You're adding that expertise. You need to do the upfront analysis so that you can guarantee that the product that you deliver is way more focused and meaningful than if you were not involved. That's the value you add. So that also means you're going to be a little bit of stubborn, dog-headed determination kind of thing, and you're going to say, I need to do this analysis, because you have to assume that you're the only one doing this kind of work, because you're the designer. So your job is to do that analysis. So let's get into the 5 whys. So guess what? 5 whys invented by a very interesting person. His name was Sakichi Toyoda. And yes, he was Japanese. I love Japanese names because they have all these beautiful vowels and syllables. And it's just, I love pronouncing them. My Polish background, that's just what happens. So Sakichi he's called the king of Japanese inventors. He's an inventor. Invented some interesting machines back in his time that had to do with textile creation and looms. But if it sounds like his last name sounds very much like Toyota, it's because his son went on to create the Toyota company. And what's really cool is that the 5 whys method, which Sakichi came up with, is still used in Toyota today, which is so neat. Let me tell you what the 5 whys is. So, when a problem occurs, you ask why. Guess how many times? 5 times. And basically, you're trying to find the source of the problem with the 5 whys. And then you put into place something, I'm hoping it's scenarios, to prevent the problem from recurring. And this concept is used today as a part of applying lean methodologies, which have to do with quality and removing waste and improving efficiency and effectiveness. And this is to solve problems, improve quality, and reduce costs. And I think that when you think about improve quality, solve problems, and reduce costs, to me, the first thing that pops to my mind is that's why I design e-learning scenarios, because I want to address problems, improve quality, or reduce costs. And to me, costs have nothing to do with how much you actually spend. It's about efficiency. It's about, if I can spend $10,000 and improve efficiency and get $100,000 in return, if I know that that's a guaranteed investment, I will spend $100,000 because now I know that that'll get me $1 million. Do you know what I mean? So for me, it's really about efficiency, effectiveness, and return on investment. And I think that's where scenarios, if you do this upfront questioning, boom, they deliver that value. But you have to do that upfront questioning. So how do you do this? Why do you do this? Now, the thing is, when people come to you with reasons why something's not working, usually that's wrapped up in emotion and their perceptions and all those other things. So what's awesome about you is that you can now come in and you're kind of like, you're the expert advisor, and it's wonderful to have no stake in that initiative because you are not tarnished by any kind of influence or politics or anything. You're coming in as this trusted advisor that wants to get to the root of the problem so you and the team that you're working with can deliver the most awesome return on investment scenario ever. That's basically your goal, right? I mean, you always want to walk in every time I start a scenario project. I want you to adopt this. If it's really fun, I always say this is going to be an award winner. That's what we're creating here. And when you set that expectation, everybody's kind of like goes up, like their motivation and their like pride goes up like 5-10 levels because they're like, yeah, this one's going to be an award winner. I enter every single project like that. Like, this one's going to be an award winner. And you know what? It works. So one of the things I want you to think about with the 5 whys method is that here's some tips. You can't stop asking the why questions when somebody says, let me give you an example. And then I have another example that I found on the Six Sigma site. They deal with quality stuff, right? And they have a funny example. So I'll give that one to you. But one of the cool things you can do is when you're asking the why questions, don't worry about your ego. Just drop it. Don't worry about sound. Like, a lot of people assume, like, this is just mind game stuff. Like, oh, I'm going to sound silly. Oh, I'm going to sound... You won't. You will not sound silly or like a kid, or nobody will be annoyed with you for getting to the root of the problem. And in fact, if they're annoyed with you to try to get to the root of the problem, ignore that. Just keep going. You're a pro. You want to deliver pro stuff. You want to get to the root of the problem, because that's what you're trying to fix. You're not trying to fix some kind of perception stuff. You're trying to fix real issues, right? So, and one of the things that really helps you here is to write things down. So, let's say somebody says, we have this survey that we have to do with every single customer at the end of every service. And some of our technical staff don't do the survey, but, I don't know why, but they're not doing the surveys with the customers. And our dealership gets, their, we get our bonuses based on those surveys. So if we don't fill in the surveys, we don't even qualify for the big bonuses. Like, those bonuses go to all the staff. So then you're like, well, why don't the staff do the surveys at the end of the service? And you might say, well, it's because they're not motivated to do it, and they find it just really cumbersome. Okay, well, why do they find it cumbersome? What's the process look like? Well, it's this piece of paper with 25 questions, and then the customer rushes, and then what happens is we're so tight on time that it basically takes so long that they don't have the time to actually spend the time with the customer to go over it. Okay, all right. So then, and then you say, why don't they have the time? Why don't they have the time? Because it sounds like they're capable. It sounds like they know that these surveys are important to their income. Why don't they have the time? And then somebody might say, well, when our scheduler does the timing, she just times for the service. She just schedules that person for the service. She doesn't schedule them for the service and the time it takes a survey. And a typical survey takes 10 to 15 minutes. Okay. Well, why doesn't that person schedule the extra 10 to 15 minutes? Well, it's because our system only, let's say, has, when you pre-program the system when it was first set up, we didn't have the surveys, so we didn't actually add that on in the system. So when we book like a brake change, it says brake change, it's 40 minutes, and that's exactly the time. It doesn't give you the extra 15 minutes that the survey is required for. Boom, okay. There we go. So now you've actually got it down to people are not motivated to... Our scheduling system, when it was first set up in the 1982, we didn't have to do these surveys back then. We just shook a customer's hand. So now we're still using the same system, and we're not adding that extra 15 minutes because the mechanic isn't any faster. He still has to work on a physical vehicle. So now we are working with, it's a systems issue, right? It's not like people aren't motivated. So that was just a off the top of my head random example, because I've dealt with, I've had a lot of discussions about vehicle surveys and, and also deconstructing why people aren't motivated to somehow get free money, because that's what this is all about, right? It's it's sometimes we make assumptions and we have to. And I'm not saying we make assumptions. Sometimes it's just our mind naturally. When we see two things that are kind of not connected, our mind will work on a story to fill the gap because we have to. That's how we make sense of the world. So the 5 whys are there to unpack those assumptions and unpack the stories that we've made up or somebody else has made up to justify what's happening, and just kind of strip that away and just really get down to the root of the problem. And you know what's awesome? What's fabulous is when you are working with somebody, they come in with what they think is the issue, and you're not antagonizing them in any way. You're just saying, you know what, I just really want to understand this because it'll help me make a better product. It'll help me make a better scenario. And the other thing is it'll help us be more successful. That's really what you're trying to do. And I think a lot of times, if we just let go of the narrative that's in our head, like people don't understand e-learning, everybody's in my way. No, just start asking the why questions. Get rid of that narrative and just start being really curious about what's going on, finding the root of the problem. When you are then perceived as somebody who's committed to that success, somebody who's committed to somebody who's determined to find the root cause of these problems, that's when you'll start seeing changes, because the things you'll be putting out will actually be helpful. And that's going to serve as fodder for more helpful stuff down the line. So here's another example. I think it's kind of silly, but you might enjoy it. And it's really weird. So I don't know why they use this one, but I think it's cool. So, problem statement. And this is just a different approach. You're on your way to work home from work, and your car stops in the middle of the road. Why did your car stop? Well, because it ran out of gas. Okay, why did it run out of gas? Because I didn't buy any gas on my way to work. Now, that's still not enough answer to say, right? That's not a specific reason that you can fix. So then you go, why didn't you buy any gas this morning on your way to work? And you could say, well, I didn't have any money. Well, why didn't you have any money? Because I lost it all last night in a poker game. Why did you lose your money in last night's poker game? Because I'm not very good at bluffing when I don't have a good hand. There we go. So the final why leads you to a statement, basically the root cause, that you can take action on. And it's so funny. I mean, imagine you said, well, my car stopped in the middle of the road because I didn't, what's the root cause? It's because I don't know how to bluff and poker. I mean, that's kind of like, for me, that's a nutty example, but that's how far you have to go sometimes. And, and sometimes I think that, like I said before, we fill in the gaps because that's what our mind naturally does. But the 5 whys method is great at distilling this stuff. And like I said, remember to write these down as you're asking them and as somebody's giving you the reason. Because what happens when you write things down, you have to start getting concise and you have to start getting clear. And so if you can't understand the reason, that means either it needs to be thought of a little bit differently, as in rethink that reason, or it's not, you actually need to talk to other people who can tell you specifically why it's happening. Because if somebody can't articulate why something is happening, you need to go to the next level. You can say, okay, so why is this happening? Like if somebody stopped at, in my previous example, if somebody said, okay, well, why are the people who are doing the surveys, why don't they have enough time? And if they said, well, I don't know, then you have to say, okay, well, who does know? Because we have to find that out, because that sounds like it's the real reason, or it's, or at least we're getting closer to the reason why people aren't doing those surveys. So, 5 whys. Japanese invention, still in use today, will work for you. I know it will. Just, take some action on it. Don't worry about sounding weird. Just keep on pushing until you get basically an action statement. Oh, I can, and then you can say, boom, I can fix that. Or I can talk to people who can fix that. That's awesome. It's so satisfying. It's just gonna change your life, honestly. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week. Let me know if you use the 5 whys, because that would be super awesome. I hope you do, because it will change the way you look at problems, and it will actually, I think that what it will actually do for you is that you can now look at any single problem, regardless of how huge it is, and ask questions. And this is a simple framework, but use this framework to actually get to the root of the problem. And what's wonderful about it is you don't have to use any sophisticated statistics. You don't have to look at, like, anytime you have these kind of, what are they called? These special problems that are not sticky, but they're kind of like gray area type problems, that it seems like it's an emotional issue or whatever. A lot of times these people problems, interpersonal issues, they can actually be driven down to like a special root cause with the 5 whys, and then you're like, wow, look, I can actually do something about this, because a lot of times those problems seem like there's nothing you can do because they seem so nebulous, right? So this just helps you pare it down to actual things you can do and everybody else can help you with, to design a scenario that will actually tackle something. So, for example, guess what I'm designing a scenario about? Well, how to bluff in a poker game. Which face are you going to show? So I hope you enjoyed that, and I will talk to you next time. Have a wonderful rest of the week. Take care, friend. Bye.
You're listening to the E-Learning Scenario Design Podcast with Anna Zabramowitz.